Hey guys, Tammy here. And in this video, I'm going to talk about, does your child want to live with you? Now, this can be a little bit tricky because depending on the age and the circumstances, like you don't want the court to accuse you of trying to alienate the child. But we also want to be able to advocate for the child and to help the child if they're struggling with the other parent. This is usually kind of a process. It's not a quick fix, and the age of the child does come into play here. Before I talk about this, let me just remind you, if you like this content, then please hit like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so that you get notified as new videos are released. And as always, please feel free to share this on social media. Now, where we see children talking or children verbalizing wanting to live with one parent is primarily in the teen years, right? It's pretty rare for a 5 to 10-year-old to be saying that. I have had a couple cases like that, but it's just not as common. So I'm going to kind of focus on the teen thing. And I will tell you that the vast majority of states don't have a specific age where, oh, now the child can decide. As a matter of fact, I can't even think of one in particular that has a very specific age that says like, oh, at age X, they can start doing this. I know we're told a lot by friends, family, people, oh, they're this age, they can decide once they're this age. Nope, not true in the vast majority of jurisdictions. So I would encourage you to just go out to Google and type in your state and write what child can decide, what age can a child decide where to live for child custody. And you'll probably get your answer that, yeah, no, there's no specific age. Now, what I will tell you is the court looks at, well, how old's the child? What's the child's level of maturity? What's the overall situation? They will weigh the child's preference as a component, right? It's part of the overall consideration, but it's not the end all be all. It's not like, oh, kid, it's up to you. No, kids' wishes are a factor amidst other factors. Okay. So when a child wants to live with you, I mean, one of the things that makes this a little challenging, I think, is, there's potential backlash from the other parent. What if we go through with this and it doesn't help, or it makes the situation worse? Like we had a therapist tell us at one point that with my late husband's children, that we could probably get more parenting time, but that the consequence to the children would be that it would become so much more pressured in their mom's world that it would be really hard on them. And so it may not be worth the offset, so to speak. But when your child comes in and they tell you they want to live with you, the first thing that I would do, honestly, if they're not in therapy, I would get them in therapy. I would try to get to the bottom of why they don't want to be with the other parent. I would always encourage them to be with the other parent. And I would even, one of the things the court's going to do is put them and the other parent in therapy. So if you can reach out and facilitate that and, maybe get the other parent to agree to that, that would save you a lot of grief and trouble and all those things in court. Now, ultimately, if the child refuses to go, then the court isn't going to say you have to physically force the child to go. Physical force is essentially abuse in the court's eyes. And so they're not going to tell you that you have to physically force the child. My experience, police will not come and physically force a child either. So if you have a, 14-year-old that's sitting down and crossing their arms and saying, hell no, I won't go, well, then you probably should file something in court and say, the child's refusing to go. I don't know what else to do. And in the meantime, you better, through all of your parent authority, try to get that child to go. If you got to take cell phones, if you got to do this, if you got to do that, whatever it takes to try to get the child to go, that's what the court expects you to do. The court kind of says, okay, well, if the child wouldn't go to school, would you let them just sit down and say, nope, not going? No, you wouldn't. You would say, I'm sorry, it's school. You got to go. And that's how the court expects you to treat the other parent's parenting time. The irony of this is that you also can't tell the child that they couldn't sit down and refuse. You have to let them come to that point themselves. And I think this is where the dilemma comes in for most parents is we're so used to being the buffer for our children, between our children and whatever issue they're dealing with. And we're used to advocating for them. We're used to being their voice a lot of times. And you don't get the privilege of doing that with the other parent. you cannot be the buffer between the other parent and the child. And when things start occurring, like the parent says, they send a message and say, I'm headed over to pick up the child. And you say, well, the child doesn't want to go with you. That would be exhibit A for the other side that you're alienating, because you're allowing that child to make the decision, especially if you do have 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. What you have to do is say to the child, your parent is on the way. Well, I'm not going. Then I'm going to take your cell phone, or we're going to do whatever. I'm still not going. Okay. Then you need to go outside and have that conversation with that parent face to face and tell them. And I know what you're going to say, like, okay, if they're dealing with a narcissistic parent, then they're going to be bullied or manipulated. That's true. That's true. And there's nothing you can do about that. That child has to hit a point to where even the manipulation, even the bullying, whatever, that they're ready to stand up and advocate for themselves and state that they're not going and why. And then you better be utilizing some mechanism within the court to sort all that out and be prepared for them to send you down the track of, therapy for the child, therapy for the other parent and the child together, all of those things. Like it's sort of like a child just deciding, oh, you don't get to discipline me today. I'm not going to comply with your discipline. You'll be like, oh, yes, you are, or you're not going to live here, right? You live under my roof, my rules, right? It's not, you have to get in your brain that the way the court views the situation is you and the other parent the child, right? Not you and the child decide if the child's going to have a relationship with the other parent. That's where the alienation factor comes in, right? And I just did a whole video about alienation but I'm just saying this is where people get accused of it. And that doesn't mean that you are. I'm just saying we want to be free from accusation of it, if at all possible, right? When a child is refusing to go with the other parent, it's usually a breakdown in that relationship with the other parent, right? The other parent isn't listening to the child. They're not fostering the relationship. They're dismissing the child. They're invalidating their feelings. All the things that narcissists do. The same things that narcissists did to us during our relationship with them, right? And it's hard because we want to protect our children from that. The problem is you can't. You can't protect your children from it. What you can do is equip your children to deal with it. You've been trying to deal with this all along as an adult, not knowing what it is, probably part of the time, at least part of the time, not knowing what to do, how to handle it. That's why you're watching this video, right? Because you're trying to figure out, how do I handle these issues? What do I do? Now you've got a child where, one, the parent's the authority figure. They don't have any idea what different techniques and things to use to deal with these kinds of issues. And they have a young brain and they don't have any life experience. So are they going to struggle to deal with it? Yeah, you struggled to deal with it. They're going to struggle. The problem is this is their parent. That's how the court views it. This is their parent. So whether that's a harmonious relationship, a difficult relationship, whatever, parental rights are constitutional and that parent still has those rights. And so the way we have to deal with this is by equipping our children to advocate for themselves without telling them that they can refuse, right? You can't go that far. That's going too far. But one of the things that I tell parents to do sometimes is I'll have them say, sounds like you're really frustrated. That'd be a great thing for you to talk to your therapist about. I bet they would have some ideas on how to help you handle it. Okay. And let the therapist, because then you've got a third party that's involved, that's not you, that's able to advocate for the child, that you're not telling the child what to do. It pulls you out of the middle. You can't be seen as alienating. And this third party expert in the court's eyes is then telling the child how to handle it. That can be really, really helpful when you get to a point where you do go to court. If the child's not in therapy, or you don't have a therapist or whatever, because the parent won't agree, then presumably the child's at least in school, if they're saying they want to live with you, right? Then you can say, you know what? I know you sound really stressed about this. Maybe you should go and talk to your school counselor. It might be really helpful. They might have some ideas for you. And again, you can't say, go talk to them because that'll help us in our court case, or they'll tell you how to stand up to your other parent or whatever. You can't say it in that way. You have to be more subtle than that. And you have to give the child time to put the pieces together and figure it out. My experience, they will. It's different for each kid. Every kid's a different kid, different level of maturity, and it takes a little time and it's a little bit of a process, but they usually will hit that breaking point. And when they hit that breaking point, then you can take the steps that you need to take, especially if you've done all this legwork in the background where you're sending them to therapy, you're sending them to the school counselor, you're forcing them to go with the other parent, you're doing all the right things. Then when it does fall apart, there's no blood on your hands, right? You've done all the things that you can possibly do to try to salvage this relationship, and the child is still refusing to go. And unfortunately, that's the breaking point that we really have to get to vast majority of the time. So if you're having this issue, you'd like help, you'd like some coaching on it, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There is information on that page. You can learn more about my coaching services and how I might be able to support you on this journey. See you guys next time.